Lesson planning. Okay. All teachers must lesson plan. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. Let me be clear. All teachers engaged in pedagogy must lesson plan. Okay? Remember, there is a difference between pedagogy and andragogy. Okay? Many teachers who say you do not have to lesson plan may not be looking at it from a pedagogical standpoint. Maybe they are used to teaching adults. Maybe they are technical instructors. Right? Okay? But even technical instructors or people who are engaged in adult learning, they still have a pathway to how they approach their engaging their learners. Different than pedagogy. Remember, K to 12 teaching is is a art form, is a complete art form. In that there's so many moving pieces in what K to 12 educators do, because we have to personalize and we have to differentiate. We have to consider the learner profile. There's so many scientific and just teacher knowing things that a K to 12 educator must do to ensure students are moving towards learning outcomes, which is a little bit different than when you are teaching adults or you are an instructor teaching something technical. That doesn't mean if you are a adult educator that you don't consider the learner profile and you don't personalize and you don't differentiate. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is things like lesson planning, doing daily lesson plans, may not be needed because you might already have a set training plan that was written by someone or you wrote it yourself, and you want to engage all learners using that daily training plan. We don't do this for K to 12. No, 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 no. K to 12 is way, way different. We can't use set plans. We can't just go to McGraw Hill and say, give us a set of lesson plans. Just doesn't work in the K to 12 classroom. It just doesn't work when we talk about teaching throughout the curriculum. Just doesn't work when we talk about not compartmentalizing learning. It just doesn't work when we're talking about dealing with students' want, needs, and expectations. Okay. Now, you may say, well, if I've been teaching second grade for the last 5 years, can I use the previous? Why can't I use the previous lesson plans to engage my future students? You can, but you have to customize those plans. You have to alter those plans to meet the wants, needs, and expectations of those new students. Every time you teach a subject, or every year that you teach, rather, you are a new teacher. Every year that you teach, you are a new teacher because you're dealing with new people. You're dealing with new want, needs, and expectations. You're dealing with new wants, needs, and expectations. You're dealing with people from a different generation, even though they're inside the generation. If we look at a generation, each year in the generation is slightly different than the previous year because each year is moving to the new generation, the newer generation that's coming up. Each year, there's a generational changes and nuances that are occurring. So someone born in 2002 generationally is not exactly the same as someone born in 2003. as someone born in 2004. There are generational differences that occur that stimulate the next generation. How does that sound? Right? So every K-12 teacher, every teacher that engaged in pedagogy must lesson plan, must do daily lesson plans. Okay? Now, in order to do a daily lesson plan, you must have a yearly plan. How about that? And a yearly plan comes from you. You must have a schematic of where you're going for the entire year. Remember, as K-12 educators, we backwards map. Backwards mapping is key to our success. Backwards mapping is key to our success. So before we write a daily lesson plan, we must have a yearly plan. Before we have a yearly plan, Before we have a yearly plan, we must know what the standards are. And we must know our standards. This is why in the daily lesson plan, the standards should always be indicated somewhere. So we are ensuring that we're moving towards the outcomes, because the standards, in essence, turn into the learning expectations, rather, right? And we measure those learning expectations to the outcomes, what the students actually did, to monitor, to assess whether our teaching is on track, right? We might throw some assessments in there, whether formative or summative, but that's how we monitor whether our teaching on track against the learning outcomes, the learning outcomes, the expected outcomes versus the actual outcomes, and they come from the standards. So if a teacher doesn't know the standards, how are they writing lesson plans? The lesson plans come from the unit plans. The daily lesson plans come from the unit plans. The unit plans come from the yearly plan, right? Or some people are writing semester plans or term plans, depending on how the pedagogical approach of that learning institution. Okay, so when you're talking about daily lesson plans, you must have as a rubric the standards. You must have as a rubric, as a guideline, or as a form of scope and sequencing, you must have your unit plan and your yearly plan. You cannot daily lesson plan unless you have a yearly plan and a unit plan. Okay? And this is the skeleton. This approach is the skeleton to teaching and learning. That's the background stuff that we do. That's the stuff that happens. You cannot be a good teacher without being a great planner. In order to be a good teacher, you must be a great planner. And a lot of the reasons why educators are having problems in the classroom is because they're not planning well enough. Because they don't know where the finish line is. Because they don't have a yearly plan. Because they don't know what the standards are. They don't understand the standards well. You have to unpack the standards. So at the beginning of every school year, the academic leaders should sit down with the teachers, the coordinators, the supervisors, who are the curriculum designers, whoever is in charge of the academic dean, sit down every year and unpack the standards. Make sure that educators know what the standards are and what they mean and how they relate to the curriculum that we're always developing. Remember, curriculum is everything we do, from the timetable to the textbooks.